Howdy once again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, fired up on about 3 cups of coffee, all ready to go. And today's video is all about oil cans, and I have many more oil cans than what I need, and you probably do too. Many of them are pump oilers or squirt oilers, but I'm going to feature the ubiquitous brass Eagle number 66. I'll take them apart, I'll talk about their advantages, disadvantages, and even show you some patent drawings. So let's go on down the basement and get started. As far as I know, they no longer manufacture the Eagle 66, but here in a 1958 McMaster car catalog, I'm on the page here with oilers and oil cans, and there's several pages of them, but here they're listed as a well, so I don't know if they were just sold under another brand at that time or what. But look at the price. It's $20 for a dozen. I bought my first Eagle oil can in 1967 when I started teaching, because they're just the ideal thing to use for lubricating the lathes and other machines that I had there. I only had one of them, and I had to keep it locked up, but it took me a whole semester to figure that out, that the kids will have a ball with them. And I tell you, if you had 2 of them in a shop, you had all-out warfare. So why are they so popular lately? Well, I think it's because of the internet and YouTube, and the fact that Adam Booth seems to have a corner on the market. Now, I'm going to refer to this patent drawing several times during the video, and I'm just showing you a portion of it here. But there's the patent number, and Mr. Paul is the designer or the inventor of it. He evidently worked for Eagle Oil Can. All of his patents were assigned to Eagle, and he had many other pump type patents as well. I'll show some of those near the end of the video. But what surprised me most here is that this goes all the way back to 1936. I thought they were from the 50s or 60s until I did my research. His name was Samuel O. Paul from West Virginia, and there are 3 pages here of descriptions for this patent. And of course, I'm not going to make you read that, and you can go to that patent number and read it if you want, but it's kind of laborious. But I'm going to try in this video to present some of the facts that are presented here, and which made this a unique item. Most oil cans are a mess. They ooze, including this one, but some are much worse than others. But this is a very old example. It still says patent pending on the bottom, so they don't even have the patent number yet. So this goes way, way back, and notice that it is shorter and smaller diameter and has more ribs on it, or corrugations, than the more modern one. Also, on the modern one, they flared it out a bit to give a little more stability. This is very, very unstable. Sitting on the bench or wherever the fender of a car, it's going to go over, and that's why you're going to see a lot of them are bent up, because brass is soft, as you know. But possibly at that time they couldn't draw a piece of steel this deep. I really don't know, because they wanted it to be seamless on the bottom, I'm assuming. And this other example here is about the same. These must be about the same vintage. Also notice that on the real old one and the picture in the patent drawing as well, they do not feature yet this type of tip. They have that kind of tip. I prefer this because it works so well with the little ball oilers. Also, these were sold with a flexible or corrugated type spout. In the patent description, they talk an awful lot about the ribbing on here, again, which they call corrugations, telling you that it stiffened this up because these were so subject to damage from being stepped on and dropped, and they go through all of those details, so read that if you want. And not only does it stiffen it up, but it gave you a finger grip that approximated the human hand. You know how the legalese is, but I thought it was pretty interesting. But that is a good part of the patent. Okay, and another thing they talk about is that the pump is totally enclosed, so you can take off the lid and fill it, and you don't have much of a mess, because you can imagine, even in your own shop, or especially at the high school, we open one of these to fill it, we set this down on the table and it just oozes. So if you didn't lay some newspaper or rags on, you got one heck of a mess. Furthermore, the mess hasn't even started, because people fill these up to the brim and then they insert the pump, and that forces out 2 ounces of oil all over the place. So that is a big deal to me regarding the 66. You will notice that I have many of my oil cans marked as to what kind of oil, and I use these in various videos, and that's why. Plus a note to myself so I know what's in there, because I have a lot of different oils. Now, even though this says Master Mechanic, this is an Eagle oil can, and Mr. Paul holds the patent for that pump as well. And here's the corrugated type spout, flexible, that I was talking about. So, do these oil cans leak? Well, there is a gasket right here, but if you don't have it tight and you lay it down, or it drops, falls over, which it will, you're going to have a mess. Also, these do have a tendency to leak in these 2 spots. There is a gasket or a washer or something, and I'm going to take those off here in a minute to show you how this works. But notice that the entire pump is internal and cannot be lifted out, but in fact it's held, again, in the patent they talk about, by 1 screw. They make a big point out of that 1 screw, which I will take off, but yet you have to take these off too, and they did not mention that. Also, in the patent description, they talk about the fact that you grip it like this, and then with your forefinger you do the pumping, and it doesn't cause this to deflect, whereas with this type, as you press this with your thumb, they're claiming that there's a tendency for it to tip and you lose your aim and oil goes all over the place. Might be a false claim, I'm not sure. Another thing is, what is the range on these? I put number 20 oil, filled it to the brim, in this one, and in this one. I went out in my backyard and I squirted against my burn barrel, and they both had a range of exactly 20 feet with 20 weight oil. I thought this one would go much farther, but it doesn't. Also, one other thing to note, that with these oil cans you can turn them upside down, because you might have to get into something like that, and you get about 2 pumps worth. Whereas with this one, I thought you didn't get any pumps at all upside down, but there were about 3 or 4 until the reservoir in the pump. And that reservoir in this pump is much larger than in the 66s. Okay, with the clean soup can here, I'm going to empty the oil and take this one apart. I made a startling discovery, because I was going strictly by this drawing here, but this is the little bracket here, number 18, that is screwed and holds the pump into place. And that's what the patent shows, but in fact when they got into manufacturing they eliminated that, and all of the fastening to the can is done right here by those 2 nuts. Alright, watch this, and I've already loosened these, but the spout comes right off, as does this, and this is the actual, I think you'd call it a piston to the pump. I've got to pull that out like that. There's a spring, a long one. And there is the pump, and it barely fits. There. This is brass, and this is die-cast zinc. You see, this is the screw that supposedly fastened it, but they probably found that it was unnecessary, that it was very firmly held by these other 2 parts. Pretty simple. And now we got a chance to look at the container itself, the barrel. And remember, this is the original one here. Now if it didn't have the corrugations, it would be pretty flimsy. I don't know what gauge it is. I could measure it, but I don't think I'll bother. Like a shell casing. And that is the piston with my thumb on it. And it's a good fit, but I don't see any O-rings or anything like that in there, nor do I see any packings out here. And that's a little vent hole. Now let's take a look at the patent drawing, because this is really very simple. If I were to take out this screw, there is a spring and a check valve, similarly down here on this end, but I think that's a press fit. Let's look at the drawing so I don't have to take that apart. Possibly this video should have been presented in my How Does It Work series, but it's too late now. Here's more or less a cross-sectional area of it. Not too much different than what I just showed you, except for that little bracket. Now let's look at the pump. Alright, here's the pump, and there's the piston number 31 and that spring that I just showed you, and it was a pretty strong spring. So when the piston is pushed in by your finger, it closes that check valve, forces it down, and opens this one, which then will allow the oil to come out of the spout. When you release it, this one will close and this one will open, a vacuum is formed, and oil is sucked up the tube and into the reservoir area here, which really would be here where the spring is, and right here, ready for the next pump. And as I told you, if you took this screw out, you could get access to that spring and that ball. But down here, I believe that's a press fit. As a matter of fact, I know it is. It actually says that in the description. Very simple. And they do not seem to mention this pump very much in the patent, because it was either covered in another patent or it's just something that is so obvious that you can't patent it. And in 1931, Samuel Paul, and there's the patent number, came up with this other pump. This is before the number 66. And that's probably still used, or a variation thereof. You can see the reservoir is much larger, but there's also two check valves in that one. Here's another one, also assigned to the Eagle Oil Company, and this Mr. Paul was very prolific. He also did many designs on gasoline cans and safety cans and things like that. So I don't know if he was an on-staff inventor or if he did this on his own, but he obviously was quite brilliant. Well, what is the downside of this oil can? I would say one is that it's soft brass. Probably costs a lot more to make because brass is so much more expensive than steel. The other thing is that it's just so prone to be knocked over. And you can see in this Plu's oiler, and many other companies as well, stabilize it with a little outrigger piece that really is a good idea. Now, if you go to your local farm store or hardware store or box store now, you're going to see that a good number of the oilers, squirt oilers, are going to be plastic, or parts of them are plastic, and probably imported. So if you want one of the genuine American-made ones here, happy hunting. And of all things, that your hunting might be in an antique store rather than a tool store. Who knows where you're going to find one. Come to think of it, I haven't seen one in a long time. I've had these for many years. And I would grab another one if I had a chance, but I don't see them come up. Of course, I quit going to auctions. Well, now let's see if I can get this thing back together without crossing any threads or ruining any of the parts. You know what's surprising the heck out of me is that there's no gaskets here unless they are missing. Because I did notice there was a little bit of leakage. You wonder if this has ever been apart before. It's more than likely from the 30s, if it's an original one. At the high school, I had a sheet metal pan that we would use to fill oil cans, because you can imagine the mess with the teenagers. Most adults are messy. Why wouldn't a teenager be? Now we'll see if this thing works. I was keeping number C, letter C oil in there for South Bend Lays. That's what that is. Yep, took about 2 pumps and she's a-working. So I didn't ruin it, in case you were worried. I have a lot of different oil cans for different purposes. This is also an Eagle oil can. It looks kind of like a teapot. But I particularly like this for filling the drip oilers on my hit and miss engines, and it's been sitting right under a spider web for many years, as you can see. Also, I have a question for you. Why is it that in The Wizard of Oz, when they find the Tin Man, they're using an oil can like this, but yet it's making that noise? I was 10 years old when I asked my dad that question. Now, for anyone out there who desires to have one of these 3 cans here, these will be available in about 5 years when I embark on my dirt nap. And there you have it. Everything you wanted to know about an Eagle Oil Can 66, but were afraid to ask. I hope you liked the video and that it was not too long. This is tubalcain saying so long for now, and I hope to see you in my next video.